So verse 71. Yes. Maestro. Shivam Samarabham Sakasharya Madhyamam Asmadasharya Parantam Mande Guru Param Ishvaro Viraptemeti Mochiveda Vibhagire Vyomavada Vyapta Vihaya Dakshinamurtiya Namaha Sarva Vedanta Siddhantam Bhusharam Samadvastaram Govindam Paramanandam Satchiguru Brahmasoshyam Om Shanti. Verse 71. The self which declares the truth about its nature say, I am not in things and beings. They are all in me. Oh, there we go.
Not in things and beings.
The self which declares the truth about its nature say, I'm not in things and beings. All objects are just in me. Things and beings. Sentient objects, they are in me. So simple, huh? It's just a question of identify ourselves, properly and acknowledge our all-pervasive nature, identity as consciousness, awareness, existence. It's just a understand of one's own identity, the formless body of existence. That's what I am. Consciousness shines through everything and every being, and all of them appear in me. Vedanta can be confusing, which is why we need a competent teacher. The confusion arises when we fail to distinguish the levels of understanding from which certain statements are made. On the level of the individual, objects exist. When that individual is told that the self is all, he may conclude that objects are the self and impart limitless existence to apparent existence. Limitless existence to apparent existence. In other words, he may come to believe that the snake is real because the rope is real. So this is called superimposition. When there,
There's a school of Tantra that does that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How so?
They say that since the self is real, its manifestations must be real as well.
Yeah.
So we should enjoy the world as if it were.
Yeah. So all there is the self, and therefore we take the attributes, less attributes of the self, we superimpose on Nietzsche, and we get confused. Therefore, the objects must be real, the jiva must be real, the mind must be real. Everything is real, since all there is the self. This is called superimposition of Mithya on Satya. Of Satya on Mithya, right? Satya on Mithya. In other words, we may come to believe that the snake is real because the rope is real, failing to distinguish their difference. Now, it's true that the snake illusion could not exist if there were no rope. It's further true that all illusion is only possible because of awareness, but that does not reduce awareness to the illusion. Right? That does not reduce the reality of awareness to the objects appearing in awareness. It's like in say, I mean, suppose I am fully identified with my physical body. I say, I am this body. And then I look at my finger, and I have 5 fingers. This is all me, the body. And then an accident comes and I lose a finger. So, did I lose something? Not really. So, did the finger was somehow proper representation of myself, as the body? No, it's just a small, really little part of my total body. The same way, we cannot say that the self is the body. The body is a very small fraction of this projection. There is the totality of the projection. There is this sentient jiva, and the self is absolutely untouched, unmodified by any of these objects. So we can say that everything is the self, but the self is none of those things. Everything is an extension of the self, an apparent extension of projection on the self. But we cannot say that my finger is me. Can I say that my finger is me? No. My hand is me? No, because if I lose my hand, me is still that should say, okay, I am here, me, without a hand, right? So I am my hand, but my hand is not me. That's the point. The self is also its appearance. Therefore, in the end, we can negate the negation and say, hey, by the way, it's all God, it's all me, it's all the self. But we need first to establish what is real and what is just apparently real. It is further true that all illusion is only possible because of awareness on which it is superimposed. But the self is not contained in the illusion any more than the rope is contained in the snake. The beings that are perceived as separate objects have no reality. That is, they are not self-existent or self-luminous. They appear in awareness. Awareness does not appear in them. Again, the same point. Consciousness is not a part or product of the body. It's not an attribute or property of the body. It's Maya somehow reverts things and makes it appear that way. So the scriptures have the purpose of reverse things back. No, it's duality. No, it's non-duality. There is only the self. It's to revert the reversal. They appear in awareness, but awareness does not appear in them. This may be difficult to follow, but the distinction being made in this verse is of great practical importance. Many scandals and much suffering can be laid at the doorstep of the failure to understand that the self is not in objects. Although all objects appear in the self. It is to prevent such misunderstanding that this text has expended much time and detail on the qualifications for receiving these teachings. So let's try to do some work together here on these scandals. Many scandals and much suffering can be laid at the doorsteps of the failure to understand that the self is not in object. So when we fail to understand that the self is not a product of any object, that's what it say, right, James?
Mm.
When we fail to understand that, and we believe that the objects are the source of the self, or awareness, consciousness coming from the self, that misunderstanding brings about suffering in many scandals. I'm not picturing the scandals they refer to.
He gets to it in the
Oh,
last sentence.
the last sentence. Okay, it's coming. Although all objects appear in the self, it is to prevent such misunderstanding that this text has expended much time and detail on the qualifications for receiving this teaching. When unqualified people lay hold of the great sayings of the Upanishads, the lack of discrimination and dispassion can produce regrettable behavior. One is still very much inclined to believe happiness is in objects, is like to conclude, if all is the self, then it does not matter what I do. So the whole concept of the craze wisdom gurus. I am the self, everything is the self, so who gives a damn? Let's go and do whatsoever we want to do, you know? It's all an illusion. If we don't understand that the self is not an object, we're gonna be chasing objects, deluding ourselves to say that I'm not chasing any object because the object is me and me, I am the object.
I'm celebrating life.
I'm celebrating life and I'm hiding behind my vasana that's compelling me to chase objects as I mean to fulfill myself. But I have got hold of the words and then I justify myself and I say, no, it's just me. Don't worry, I'm using you, I'm controlling, manipulating, using your mind and your body, but don't take it personally. We all one, the self. So it's the misuse of the words of Upanishads.
Can yourself arrange these things with a donation?
Where that come from?
Was a joke.
Sometimes I don't understand the joke of my good friend Gabriel. Okay, where I am here. One is still very much inclined to believe that happiness lies or exists inherently in the object, is like to conclude it's all the self, then it doesn't matter what I do. Let's have a party. In effect, the ego, identified with the body mind, assuming it has carte blanche to gratify its desire. Huh?
Carte blanche.
Carte blanche. It has a free passage. Huh? How there is an English equivalent? Free
Free pass.
free pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. No carte blanche. Free pass. We all Americans here. Americans. It's the land of the Yannis. We assume that the body mind assumes it has a free pass to gratify its desires in the name of self-realization. We all know that very well. A lot of people do that. So having heard that, we just keep our discrimination well placed so that we don't fall for that because it's trick. When you see that avasanas are pushing you around and your knowledge is not firm enough, it's very easy to buy into those delusions and say, no, I did that for your own good. It was for you that I did that.
There's one version of what Ramji calls enlightenment sickness.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good term.
Yeah.
Enlightenment sickness.
Yeah, enlightenment sickness is a very common sickness because of most of the case, the jiva, when he realizes that he is free, limitless, ordinary awareness, he still believes that he has gained a kind of a trophy. Oh, I made it. I got it. And then the ego remains there, think that, oh, I'm the doer of enlightenment. I'm the achiever of enlightenment. And I want people to see my trophy. We like to see the world to see our trophy wives. So and then we go there and then such sign for sale, enlightenment here in my house. And I want to go out there and enlighten people.
But also people want to be deceived, So there's business here.
Yeah. People, they, huh? Yes, but it has its purpose. As Digrit is pointing out, everything has its place and its purpose. And it's common phenomenon, enlightenment sickness, since James brought into. It's very common at the beginning, and it goes. Usually, it goes. Sometimes people they have an infection. It's a little virus, but develops into infection. Sometimes cannot be cured. But and then it becomes huge, becomes big. It takes over the mind, and then the person has no discernment left to see that. But most of the case, it comes and it goes. That's why it's important to keep affirming. Even if there is a little bit of enlightenment sickness there, we just keep affirming. Yes, you're the self, I'm the self, everything is the self. And because the person is by itself, by himself or herself, is going to understand that the knowledge needs adjustment. Because ultimate self-realization is the lack of sense of one having done everything, achieved anything. The sense of doership has to go with it. So you have to submit every actions and thoughts to Ishvara and stand as awareness above Ishvara. And then you know that you're just being played by Ishvara. And it is Ishvara because the moment that you understand it and conform your thoughts and actions with Ishvara, you know that now I'm in the hands of the Lord. I don't even need to think anymore. I'm properly programmed by the Lord. Oh, nice. He's going to talk about our guru here, Rajanishi of the Rolls Royce.
Sorry, Osho. I never knew whether the Rolls Royces were a joke by him or whether he really believed in it, actually. Do you know that?
No, I know that he used to tell us that I'm doing that to gain attention. I want the whole world to know that I exist, and they are going to pay attention to me the moment that I have all this Rolls Royce. The moment that everybody is looking at me, I'm going to be able to transform the world, which was his ambition. I want to be the first Buddha that's going to transform the world. Big dream, huh? Big ego. And they say,
That's all they remember. That's all they know about it is that he had that many Rolls Royces.
yeah,
Most people can name the number 2093.
yeah,
So in that sense, it worked.
yeah, it worked. It made him very known, very popular. Oh, the guy of the Rolls Royce. Oh, the guru sex, the sex guru, the Rolls Royce guru, and so on.
Well, I remember when I was there was not one Rolls Royce, only an old Chevrolet. It was in Pune 1. Then he was famous already.
Yeah.
So,
But he was a little bit famous. He became when he went to the USA, and then it was big, and then the Rolls Royce were all over the place in the ranch.
And then he became rather notorious, I would say.
Yeah, notorious. Yeah. In Puna 2, only one Rolls Royce. So we sold all those Rolls Royce in Oregon, and then there was only one old Rolls Royce to take him for 50 meters, 100 meters. He could not walk. I mean, walk is good. Why not to walk? And that was so absurd, huh? To have him going 50 meters from his house to the Buddha Hall on a Rolls Royce. Anyhow, he won, at the time at the ranch, he won 365 Rolls Royce. And there was a lot of pressure on his secretaries and the people around him to find more donators, more money. He was fixated with that. Fantastic self-indulgence. Recalls Rajneesh's ninth third Rolls Royce. Sexual license and abuse of power ensue. What is ensue?
Result.
Result. We have those vasanas. If we give in into those vasanas, they become monsters. They get big. They reinforce themselves. They want more and more and more and more and more and more. That's why the term, give food to the vasanas when they give you a hard time, give food, but with moderation, intelligently. We all know that by the experience of, of sexual drive, if we have a sexual drive and you start giving food every time that the thought comes, that become a monster when you want that every day, and every day with somebody different. So we need to think intelligently. You just give a little food to those vasanas to the degree that they don't disturb too much the mind, and you do that telling yourself, well, I'm doing that not as I mean to complete myself. I'm just doing that for the sake of relaxing my mind, because this has become a nagging voice to disturb my mind, to the degree that disturbs too much one mind. But then it's a fine line, because if we overdo it, yeah, depend on everybody. Everybody is a different construct. Some people have much more of those energies. Some people have less.
And also vasanas,
Uh,
if you don't entertain them, then they start disappearing.
yeah, they shrink.
Yeah.
It's not suppressor. It's not engaging them widely. There is a fine line that we householders can apply. It's the middle way, like Buddha used to say, moderation. One time, somebody asked Sagadatta Maharaj, so what is your advice for me? And no, it was for Ramana, I guess. And Ramana said, moderation with food, sleep, and speech. Very nice, huh? Simple. Just be moderate with your speech, food, and sleep. If we sleep too much, we become tamasic. Yeah. If we talk too much, we become too rajasic. Usually, we activate the mind. And if we eat too much, we are like, we are tamasic, we are tired. All the energy is going to processing food. I just realized I was feeling tired the last few afternoons, and then I said, no, there is something wrong. I'm eating too much beans. I have early breakfast, and then at 1:30 we're having lunch, and then I'm so hungry, and then I overeat a little bit, and then I have 1 hour to rest a little bit. I come here with a barely just beginning the process of digestion, and then I'm all tired and tamasic. Today I ate very little. I ate some protein and much, much better.
Come to Ragini. Very good food. And 120 rupees.
The restaurant of my wife is the best, and it's open only for me.
But she need to rest also. Give some time.
Now she, now my wife needs to
It's
be
taking over.
to be active to stay in good shape. She needs to be active.
She's resting now.
Huh?
She's resting now.
She rests like that. She has to get her rajas to rest into activity. Unfortunate Western seekers often have little preparation to receive these great sayings of the Upanishads, which may excite them to rash behavior based on misconceptions. This is the most common one. People get in contact with the knowledge of the Upanishad. The first thing they want is to jump the gun and say, hey, I just heard it yesterday. I stayed 2 hours. I heard James. I read the chapter on knowledge and experience, and I got it all. I am the self. Don't worry. Job done, you know? So we are so impatient. We want things like that we say, no, I got it. And now it's for good. You know? One of our friends from your group told me the same thing, you know? Like, oh, I got it. It's unbelievable. I mean, how can I forget it now? Now I got it. It's so clear. So it's amazing. I can go back to my life and do everything I was doing always, and I'm absolutely clear. And I'm listening, and I say, so am I the one to give the bad news now? And then I have to say, I'm sorry, but it's not really that way. You have to work because this light goes on, but it goes off very easily. You know, there are moments that we have clear, the knowledge is firm in our mind, and then next moment the light goes off again. Ignorance appears, rajas and tamas, and then we are again. So we need to do the work. But it's very common that people jump the gun and people all over the place here, people who have been with Ramji that are not here, quite several. No, I got it. I have no doubts anymore. When you look, observe their lives, they are just, unfortunate. They are just deluded because the ego wants to jump the gun and say, hey, don't worry, I got it all, job is done, and so on, and just between me and you, I know it. I know who I am. I'm self-realized. I said, okay. And somebody told me very funny. Well, you know why? When I first met Ramji told me, you are highly qualified. And therefore, I got it very quickly. We should send that post of Ramji to this person. 5 years of Shravana, and then 5 years of Manana, and then 5 years on Nididhyasana, and then if you are like 10, 15, if you are lucky, you're going to be free from ignorance. But we live in this instant society where gratification has to be quick. Otherwise, otherwise it's no good. The great sayings. Unfortunate Western seekers often have little preparation to receive the great sayings of the Upanishads, which may excite them to rash behavior based on misconceptions. Self-deluded people or exploitative teachers can make matters worse, so the teachers love those to do that. The great sayings, such as you are that, are intended to free us from dependence on objects, not to sink us further into delusion in the name of enlightenment. Right?
Can you read that again, please?
The great saying, you are that Vamasi, is meant to free us from ignorance, not to push us in further ignorance, meaning to say delusion, because when we hear that, it's the truth, and then we want to believe it. And we have our beloved teacher who says, at the beginning, it may feel a little funny, therefore fake it until it make it. But this fake until it make it is not to tell yourself and tell us, hey, I am consciousness and I'm already free. I'm enlightened. It's not that. It's like your own experience is going to contradict the scriptures, and you say, I don't give up. I am the self. And I can tell again from my first hand experience, I was so deeply influenced by Nisargadatta Maharaj. Nisargadatta Maharaj did not have much of a teaching, but it had such a power of authority. You say, you are that. Uh, Stop deceiving yourself. You are not a person. You remember that one? You are not a person. You are consciousness, pure consciousness, and so on. I had such a trust in what he was saying that again and again I would behave stupidly. And sometimes some people would tell me, say, oh, you see, all your spirituality means nothing. It's worth nothing because, again, you are behaving like an idiot, a stupid jiva. You are this jiva. And then I would say, never. I can fall with my nose and break my nose and anything, and I stand up and I tell, I am of the nature of consciousness alone, even if I act, otherwise, in an otherwise manner. That's what it means. Just keep up with it. Don't let your experience by being driven by stupid vasanas to challenge the knowledge. I am that, and I'm already ever free. It's meant to encourage us to do the work, even if it contradicts our experience. You understand? This is just some ignorance is still operating. But the truth is, I am that. Ever free, limitless, ordinary consciousness. The title of this work is the crest jewel of discrimination. Discrimination is the method Vedanta prescribes for knowing the self. And discrimination begins by identifying objects as not self. So how can we discriminate the self if we don't discriminate first, or if we don't catalog, so to say, what is an object, what is the not self, the apparent self? First we need to understand what is the not self, because the self got mixed up with the not self. Therefore, we need to understand what is the not self here, because the self, it's very difficult to pull it from the not self by only discriminate what is the self, because what can we say about the self? But the not self is all those apparent objects, with properties and attributes and qualities and forms and names and so on. So we need to go through our experience and begin understanding what is the not self, what the scriptures mean by not self, so that we can isolate the self from the appearance, from its experience. It's all about that. Discrimination discriminates the self from its experience with which the self gets identified and entangled. So we need to begin by determining what is the not self. We must be patient in learning to discriminate, and we must understand that the words employed in the teaching mean, according to the teaching tradition, which is called the Sampradaya. What is it? We must be patient in learning to discriminate, and we must understand what the words employed in the teaching mean. We need to understand the meaning of the teachings, and we need to understand it in the context of the tradition. You cannot take small bits and pieces of the teachings and then mix up with some funny personal ideas and interpretation, and then present it to the world and say, hey, by the way, this is better than Vedanta. It's more suitable to modern men and so on. So we cannot do that. We have to have the the entire complete teaching within the context of the tradition, which is called Sampradaya. Does this sound bad? No? The not self, meaning to say the objects, are all mithya. We describe as mithya. Their existence is only apparent and dependent and depends upon satya, which is the only reality, the self. The usual explanation of satya and mithya is by analogy. So we know that the pot and the clay, the silver, the gold and the ring, the gold ring and so on. That explains the nature of Satya. Satya is the most fundamental nature of the universe and of the jiva. The same way the gold is the fundamental nature of the gold ring, and the clay is the fundamental essential nature of the clay pot, and so on. Everything depends on our fundamental nature. All silver or gold, all gold ornaments depend on gold. Gold does not depend on any of those ornaments. The ornaments can be melted or destroyed and gold remains intact. Likewise, the self does not depend on any of its objects. The objects are superimposition. Clay is the substratum of those superimposition. The same way all objects in Nitya's are superimpositions on awareness. Pot is only an appearance in clay. Beings, objects, are superimposed on the self, much like the pot is superimposed on the clay. The self is not in the objects any more than the clay is in the pot. That's very simple. No? The clay does not depend on the pot. The clay, is not in the pot in that sense. The pot is in the clay. And the same way, the self is not in the object. The objects are in the self. In fact, there is only one self. The self is in reality, there is only one clay, appearing as numerous objects. Verse 72, if the world were real, it would appear in deep sleep. That's a good one as well. Real is that which is always ever present, does not come and go, does not have any interruption or beginning or an end. If the world would be real, it would be always ever present. That which is real does not change or go and come back. It abides in all three states of experience. What is that which abides in all three states of experience? Yes, the self. The self, the substratum, the knower, the knowledge, consciousness. We experience this subject-object duality when we are awake and when we are dreaming. We supposed difference between dream objects and awaking objects do not affect the experience of duality. The supposed difference between dream objects, they are made out of sat alone, vasanas, sat, they projected. The other object, the physical object, the projection of Maya, and then superimposed by our knowledge of the object, which sometimes is a proper knowledge and faithful to the object. The supposed difference between dream objects and awake objects do not affect the experience of duality. They are both duality. When we pass into what is called deep sleep, the subject-object duality fades or collapses, or it's no longer experienced. The world disappears. So the world cannot be real. Understood? It means say it's not referring to existence here. It's meaning to say the world of objects, the world of names and forms. Existence remains all through. Consciousness remains all through. Knowledge remains. The substratum remains. But the world of objects disappears. So the world of object cannot be real yet. When the world disappears, we remain as the witness of absence of objects. The, the, the deep sleeper. When we awake, we say, I slept well and I did not dream an object, not a single one. We recollect deep sleep, but we can only describe it negatively from the standpoint of the awakened state. Now, one thing may be distinguished from another by note those qualities it lacks in comparison with another. So we can distinguish one thing to another, comparing its qualities and attributes. And this object has this attribute, this does not have, and so on. But such a negative description tells us very little about the nature of the thing itself. That's very interesting. Huh? We know we don't experience objects in deep sleep. This is a negative description. We know that the state exists in which objects are absent. So we know that objects are conditional. They depend upon a particular circumstance for their apparent existence. That which depends upon something else is not self-existing. So those three states of human consciousness, they depend on the self. They are not self-existing, none of them. Which means they are not real. The only thing that is present through all three states of experience is that which we are. Consciousness, the witnessing, the subject. The witness does not change as the states change. It is unaffected by the presence or absence of object. Deep sleep is evidence of this abiding witness, which is unchanging awareness, the self. Deep sleep is also evidence that the world is not real, right? The mind is not working. We don't have the intellect at our disposal, the ego, the mind, and yet vasanas are projecting objects in the in the dream state, and then a gap comes and the subject, the vasanas project, and the objects they cease. And then there is something there which is still capturing those gaps, and that can only be the self, because it's the only thing that does not change. The states themselves change. Yeah? We call the prajna jiva, the dreamer, the deep sleeper. The deep sleeper is going to change into the waker or into the dreamer, but there is something which is the substratum of those three states of consciousness. States are objects, by the way. Every time we have a beautiful state of mind, the first thing that the ego says, I got it. This is it. Huh? Oh, I got it. This is it. If you say this is it, it means it is an object. It's an object defined by it. It's a state, a very subtle object. Did you know that? Huh?
Yeah, okay. And how do you move from there to awareness? You know, there's there's almost no distinction.
Yeah, you don't move from
You don't move.
you don't move. You just
It's extremely difficult. You know,
no.
it's like sticking together. You know,
Yeah.
but seems to be.
There is you, and there is an object called this one here. There is you, an object. Do you have any trouble to distinguish you from this one, from this object? No. And then there is you and your friend Dave. You have any trouble to distinguish you, the subject, the consciousness witnessing. No. And then you have a thought. Do you have any trouble to distinguish you from the thought? It's a little bit more trick because very often we get identified. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So when we go into those very, very subtle realm of objects, such as states, very subtle states of sattvic mind, when we go into those states, it's a projection on a sattvic mind, but it's a very subtle object. We say, "Oh, I got into such a beautiful state. It just came when I did my sadhana, and then it left. It's a it. Yeah, 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 yeah. The state is something that is not here all the time. It's an object, but objects by nature they're impermanent.
Because it changes.
It changed. So how you know it's an object? Because it's a it. You say, "Oh, I had such a state. It was such a state. It is such a beautiful state."
It feels pretty real.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a problem identifying with the dog or cat when they appear to us. They are object. But this state is such a subtle object. It's a reflection, a sattvic mind. That's why the scriptures warn us. So be careful not to get stuck in sattva. In sattva, the mind reflects these very subtle objects that are better than sex and food. Yeah.
But how do you remove the stuff?
You don't.
It's like a kind of
Yeah, you don't. You just discriminate. You just follow the simple logic that I'm trying to describe to you. If I can objectify something, this thing cannot be me because in in, in reality or in truth or in the universe or in our human experience, there are only two factors operating: subject and object. This is duality. There is you and there is a state of mind. The you, the ego, pro- projects itself and thinks that I am the state of mind. And by the way, I superimpose the state of mind on the self and say, and by the way, this is the self. You understand? But if it is a this or it that comes and goes, cannot be the self because it changes. It's not permanent. Therefore, it's a waste of time. We try to cling to it and use it as a platform to define first I am this and this is the self. First I superimpose the ego on that state and then the state on the self. If it is impermanent, if it comes and goes, it is a it. I and them. What are those beautiful Sanskrit words? I and them. Uh-huh. I and them. Yeah. So it's that simple. We don't need to do any jump or transfer or anything. We just keep discriminating anything that comes into our field of experience and we say, this is not it.
Observe that situation as an object and let it be because it will change and disappear and keep on discriminating.
Yeah. You don't need to discriminate that as an object. The moment that it comes under your objectification, it means it's an object. You are the subject. It appears. It's an object. Every experience is an object, no matter how wonderful and spiritual it may be. It's an object, and that's the danger. We get stuck in sattva when we come there. Do you remember our exchange of email? We get stuck very easily because it's so beautiful. We want it to be it. And I want me to be that and that to be the self.
It's a kind of reflection of the self. So you
think, reflection of the self.
It's so
yeah.
subtle that you think it's me, but
yeah.
it's still a mirror.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a good experience you're attached to, so that the subtle experience is very, if there's if you like it, if you fear that it's going to go, if you fear it's going to change, then
I'm not that fear of attachment, but I cannot make the
too time. You are trying too much. You should relax. And then you are changing it away with your ajahs. Oh, there's no,
Yes.
no.
Could I ask you,
Yeah.
how does deep sleep fit in? Because there's no awareness in deep sleep, or is there? Or what's the relationship between deep sleep and awareness? I mean, deep sleep is only spoken of after the hours. You remember, which is
Yeah, it's a very fine and subtle subject because the scriptures present the three jivas as experienced entities: prana jiva, the taijasa jiva, and the vishwa jiva, yeah, as in three states of consciousness. And the prana jiva is a thought, but it's a very subtle thought, and with very little reflectivity in a way, because there is a predominance of tamas in the subconscious mind that does not allow this ability to know and discriminate from that rich standpoint, the standpoint of that I thought in the deep sleep. But in all three states of experience, who is the real experiencer there? I mean, nobody experiences anything in the waking states unless awareness is there. You understand? Fundamentally, awareness is experience itself with the aid of the three states of consciousness of the jiva.
Is this like deep sleep is remembered? The awareness, it's the memory and awareness of deep sleep.
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
on the right line?
Yeah, you're on the line. We can know what's going on there by inference, by recalling the absence of objects in between. Some yogs may say that there is a vrit there that can capture the absence of objects, but in truth is we know that by inference, and inference is a very valid means of knowledge. That's the key with Vedanta. We cannot experience things which are above our sense organs, our mind and our sense capacity to know things. We cannot have direct experiential knowledge, but we can have inferential knowledge. Inferential knowledge is very good. We can infer things by its effects. We know that there was an absence. We know that there was something still there because this thing is my own existence that did not go out of existence. I go from one state of consciousness to another, and my conscious existence remains. Understand?
Yes. When you're picking up your story, if if a person feels they have a self, a personality, that's called, you pick up your personality in the morning after you're asleep. If that programming comes into awareness again.
So
Is
what is the question?
When he wakes up,
Yeah, you become the visual, the waker.
if you identify with your story, well, then you become it. You think you are it.
Yeah, I mean it's the simple fact that you immediately get connected to the world of objects. You're already in the waking state. Everything happens beyond your will, or yeah. Okay, so it's time to go. We finished this one and we are doing good. Tomorrow we begin the verse 73. And I think we're going to conclude this text within the next 5 or 6 days. Let's say thank you to these beautiful rishis and our Guru Ramji. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankara Sharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratemeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavada Vyapata Dehaya Dakshinamutya Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satiguru Pranatosh Maham